Welcome to the session, The Trump Trifecta, Verification, Due Diligence, and Escrow Clouds. I am Cheryl Dara Boychuk of INTCAS, which stands for Intelligent Communities Around Students. I've been working in the international education field for about 20 years, mostly for usjournal.com, a family of multilingual sites all dedicated to recruiting students to the States. London-based INTCAS recently hired me to launch their very successful UK model here in the US. In my professional volunteer capacity, I serve on the editorial board for NAFSA's award-winning magazine, International Educator, and I also serve on 2 task forces for the Groningen Declaration Network, which aims to define the future of digital student data portability. INTCAS helps improve the efficiency and integrity of specific parts of the international admissions process. For the past 5 years, the UK team has been researching the international education industry and figuring out how to apply appropriate technologies from different industries, such as Salesforce, LinkedIn, Amazon, Google, as well as social networks to build these intelligent communities to ultimately boost transparency and trust for all stakeholders. In a nutshell, we help education institutions attract, recruit, and manage international students from around the world in a safe, compliant, and cost-effective way. So here's an overview of our various components, which you can select according to what your campus needs. They cover marketing through our Exploration Cloud, as well as different functions within the admissions process. We like to think of them as Lego pieces, which can certainly stand alone, but may work better together. Because of the way INTCAS was originally structured, we're extremely well positioned to react promptly to market changes. That was proven in the United Kingdom's post-Brexit environment. And we can apply some of those lessons we learned to the current political uncertainty in the United States. The beauty of it is that if nothing changes dramatically with regard to visa regulations, we can still improve the international admissions process for the sake of all stakeholders. Ah, democracy. Those pendulum swings can be painful but powerful pushes to new perspectives. Most, though certainly not all, international educators were surprised and maybe even saddened that Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. Many industry leaders are taking a wait-and-see approach, and that may be prudent under some circumstances. But some of us problem solvers get really anxious. There's certainly something we can do to fix this. Well, here's our answer to that. Let's treat the Trump phenomenon as if it were a study abroad experience. We're international educators, mostly drawn to the field to advance the notion of embracing the other. In this case, the other happens to be a guy with ideas very foreign to our own at the far other end of the spectrum. So why aren't we practicing what we preach to facilitate intercultural competence? In our professional capacity, particularly when advising students, we understand that other worldviews exist and that different people behave and believe differently. If we dig deep enough with a strong dose of humility, we can find common ground in our mutual goal to attract, recruit, and manage qualified international students and scholars. The fact is, we can do a better job in international admissions, and as we all know, we can step out of our comfort zones while staying true to ourselves. Here's what we can do. We can improve the vetting process of student visa applicants. Rather than building a wall, let's take advantage of technology to proactively conduct stronger due diligence, which has to include the stage where applicants prove financial capacity as a condition for visa approval. And in some cases, let's suggest that applicants establish escrow accounts in advance, which some parents are more than willing to do to elevate their son or daughter's visa application. And let's keep in mind that the escrow accounts also protect the student in case the education institution stumbles financially, especially in these volatile times. So in essence, we can pull from INTCAS's current menu of products to significantly improve the process. We call it the Trump Trifecta of the funds verification, due diligence, and escrow clouds. We'll start with the verification cloud. 2/3 of all international students in the U.S. pointed to personal and family funds as their primary source of funding last academic year. In the vast majority of cases, students and their sponsors used bank accounts to prove sufficient funds. INTCAS's verification cloud enables applicants or their sponsors to demonstrate financial capacity by providing a digital snapshot of their liquid funds within their existing bank accounts. That digital verification of balances takes about 3 minutes per individual bank account. So INTCAS interacts with more than 4,500 major banks around the world, enabling an industrial-level verification of funds as opposed to easily manipulated, scanned paper statements as proof of funds. If you choose to use the verification cloud, we'll create a unique URL that leads to a list of our banking network. If the student or sponsor finds that his or her bank lies within that network of some of the most popular banks in the world, then they can log in via that unique URL. You can point students to it when you explain the requirement to prove financial capacity on your admissions website or within any correspondence with applicants. The verification cloud is very appropriate for applicants from relatively low-risk jurisdictions, for those students who just need to satisfy the requirement quickly and easily. The verification cloud is the perfect tool for that. So colleagues have been talking about an increase in fraudulent bank statements from certain pockets of the world, and India has been mentioned in those conversations. INTCAS represents more than 60 banks from India alone. Last year, during our beta, we found that a few universities used the funds verification cloud only for applicants from India, which drastically reduced their applications but increased their yield significantly, and of course saved a lot of resources for the admissions staff. So the student signs in with just a few fields consistent with their application. When we register the institution, we specify which currency you'd like all monetary values converted to. In this case, we have a U.S. student applying to a UK university, so the host country currency is in British pounds. I believe most of our colleagues today are from the U.S., so of course the output conversion would be U.S. dollars. When the student is ready to add a bank account, he clicks Add New. It's a very simple interface. The student or sponsor finds his or her bank. The user will be presented with an interface very similar to what they see when logging into their bank's own online portal. For HSBC Malaysia, for example, they'll see these input fields just as they would find when logging into their own account at hsbc.com.my. The functionality is very similar to when an account holder wants to set up automatic payments to a utility company, for example, and users are increasingly comfortable with the interface as it's incredibly convenient. Now, we chose this interface in part to facilitate the fight against fraud. We address this with identity authentication. INTCAS employs the most robust security and privacy methods used by the world's leading banks, informed by Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering guidelines. We tap into a secure network used by more than 50 million consumers around the world. We enable users to enter their account credentials just as they would to access their account at the bank's portal online. This approach serves to authenticate the user's identity, and the user is always in charge of restricting access to their data at any time within the INTCAS ecosystem. Now, if any user within the INTCAS ecosystem were to try to access the same bank account twice, the system would alert INTCAS, the student or sponsor, as well as the host institution. So this screenshot shows the second time any user tried to access that same Bank of America account. The functionality to detect duplicate access has been extremely helpful during our beta stage. There may be a legitimate reason for duplicate access, such as two siblings pinging their parents' account, so we don't automatically disable any profiles. We simply alert the appropriate individual stakeholders and provide a comment section for the student to explain any irregularities. So the digital verification of account balances takes about 3 minutes per individual bank account to complete. So for each account listed and pinged, we show all transactions over the course of the past 90 days. Obviously, that's the equivalent of 3 months' worth of bank statements. So back on the student's dashboard, all account balances are displayed with totals in both the home country currency, in this case the US, as well as the host country currency, in this case the United Kingdom. The grand total appears there in British pounds, in this case in the lower left corner. Now, the accounts do not automatically refresh. The admissions counselor may not authorize a refresh. If there happens to be an agent involved, they may not authorize it either. Only the account holder can refresh the account. Each user may include balance verifications from up to 6 different bank accounts. They can refresh only once every 24 hours and 6 times total over the course of 1 year. And when they're ready to refresh any of their accounts, they have to re-enter their bank account credentials. So this really addresses our third pillar in our fight against fraud. Multiple balance verifications enable qualified students and their parents or sponsors to substantiate their financial capacity over time. INTCAS keeps a historical record each time a student submits their completed profile to their authorized host institution. So the admissions counselor can pretty easily see if there's a steady stream of income or if the proverbial red flags pop up for one reason or another. So after these checks are completed, INTCAS generates a verification certificate for the institutions. All of our services are cloud-based, so you'll be able to access these certificates as well as any data from within the student interface, such as the 90 days worth of transaction history. Of course, welcome to download or archive any of the data from students who register through your unique URL according to your own office policy. Because we're cloud-based, there's no software to install. All data is accessible via any device, of course with the appropriate credentials. So how much does it cost? The short answer is $25 per verification check. The long answer is that each user needs a license to access the INTCAS ecosystem, and we give one master license to each institution that requests one. In speaking with IT people on a number of campuses, they highly recommend one access point per user, which allows us to track which portals have been accessed, resulting in a digital paper trail. So the license enables access to INTCAS's core products, many of which will be rolling out in the US over the next year. For our purposes here, the most relevant ones are the active Exploration Cloud, which includes showcases for education institutions, and students can explore and interact directly with the global community online. The Admissions Cloud is where relevant stakeholders oversee the process through a single environment. It's a very sophisticated and forward-thinking ecosystem that really requires an entirely separate webinar. It would be well worth watching, of course. So the second component involves our products and support centers, which are more labor-intensive, and therefore we charge reasonable rates, again, based on usage. So we have a whole slew of options. In our case, in this political environment, these are the most relevant: Verification Cloud, Due Diligence, which is often used in conjunction with our Escrow Cloud. So we have two pricing options. The first allows full access to all of INTCAS's products and support centers, which includes our marketing and recruiting services. You pay for what you use, and then upon successful enrollment of a student, we charge a successful placement fee of $200. Option 2 is for campuses that are well established in their marketing and recruiting efforts and prefer to use their own channels for that. They may rely heavily on agents, for example. However, they would like to use a few of our products and support centers to improve the efficiency and integrity of their operations. The other big difference is that there's no success fee for placement at the end of the cycle, basically because they haven't used our Exploration Cloud as a source for new student recruitment. The cost is very reasonable, $25 per verification check. Verification checks must be made via our network of 4,500 banks. If the student's or sponsor's bank lies outside of our network, then the process reverts to the institution's current flow for verifying financial capacity. We offer the same price of $25 per verification check for option 2. Now, given our current political climate, you might also consider our escrow cloud for higher risk jurisdictions. Our escrow cloud often works in conjunction with our due diligence cloud. So given our fresh new president-elect, we're anticipating an increased interest in due diligence. Frankly, we think it's our responsibility at INTCAS to guide the conversation about reasonable due diligence on student visa applicants to proactively counter extreme vetting. So here's how it works. Once the institution opts for this due diligence check, INTCAS requests that the students submit a few documents. INTCAS's proprietary algorithms check over 9 billion records from around the world. For the vast majority, these cases result in a green light, which means the application can proceed without issue. There might be situations, however, when the results are yellow or red. In those cases, we would involve other colleagues from the Fraud Detection Unit, Director of Finance Operations, Legal Counsel, and Quality Control. These authorities will then make a joint decision and create a report with their recommendation whether to admit the student or not. In all cases, the final decision of admitting the student will lie with the institutions. So let's take a closer look at that due diligence report. In addition to the basic contact information of the applicant, we also include the personal details that serve as the source that drives our due diligence. You'll see the acronym PEP a few times in the report. That stands for Politically Exposed Persons. We also check for publicly recorded financial fraud as well. So ultimately, INTCAS warns of potentially negative applications which could damage the reputation of the education institution. As I mentioned, our due diligence cloud is often used in conjunction with our escrow cloud, particularly in higher risk jurisdictions. We plug into a global banking infrastructure, coordinating with leading financial institutions around the world. We establish an escrow account for each student who resides in those mid to high risk jurisdictions. The objective is to secure 100% of the first year tuition and living expenses. Evidence of those funds is provided from one of the world's top 50 prime banks through our ecosystem. So this not only minimizes the financial risk of education institutions by securing the funds for 1 year, but it also streamlines the visa decision-making process. Institutions can generate admissions letters once the funds are deposited in the escrow account. Students can submit these account details while applying for their student visa. Escrow Cloud protects the students as well. It's insured by INTCAS's fee protection policy, which means INTCAS assures students, families, and sponsors that making such a payment to any institution through INTCAS is underwritten by a AAA-rated insurance policy. INTCAS's Escrow Cloud also features a reference statement that would be shared with the institutions as well as the students once we have the entire amount in the escrow account. Every individual student will have a unique bank account code and number, which they submit as part of their visa documentation. This ensures that the institutions have their tuition and fees secured, which minimizes financial risk and any opportunity for fraudulent activities. One more advantage of escrow is that institutions can proceed with the visa process based on this escrow statement. The escrow cloud ensures that the amount deposited by the student is converted to the host country currency. This mitigates the chance of visa rejection due to fluctuating exchange rates as the amount is already secured. So due diligence costs $25 per check. In terms of the escrow, we work with bank aggregators, so we're able to pass those savings along to you for pricing option number 1. Now, for option 2, there is a $50 fee per escrow account opening. So we have an entire array of services which facilitate the process of seamlessly connecting the right student to the right institution. So ultimately, you'll see that the INTCAS model facilitates a very reasonable cost per student acquisition. We pay attention to your return on investment. So in terms of next steps, think about your goals, whether you would prefer to use just a few of our products and services to boost operational efficiency, or if you want to use INTCAS as more of a marketing tool as well. Honestly, most U.S. campuses are choosing option 1 to take full advantage of our recruitment channels in this challenging environment. Our deadlines are rolling, so contact me with any questions. We will participate in a number of in-person events throughout the year, and we'd be delighted to demo our ecosystem in person. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to working with you sooner rather than later as the next upcoming enrollment cycle is fast approaching. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day.